In an age of endless brutal chaos, where only raw strength dictates the law and truth, one man rises from the blood-soaked earth, standing at the absolute pinnacle of military might. The legendary conqueror known as Asura. But a rival commander mocks his madness, asking if he's come to die, and warns that no single warrior can stop an army of 100,000, yet Asura just stares unfazed by the massive numbers, asking what those pathetic figures have to do with anything, and he scoffs at the general, claiming he could never be defeated in 1,000 lifetimes. The general grinds his teeth in fury and orders his men to take Asura's head. But even without a weapon, Asura's power is absolute. A single strike obliterating the front line and shattering their ranks with ease, leaving nothing but destruction in his wake. The masters of the era fall one by one until he stands alone, having unified the entire land under his rule. Now in the capital of the Shura kingdom, Muwal, a subordinate, kneels, offering congratulations on the conquest, noting that with all enemies defeated there is nothing left to fear, but Asura cuts him off, demanding to know why he was really summoned here. The subordinate smiles, reminding him that he is the only king in history to unify the plains through pure might, and that even the title of war god is no longer enough to describe him. So he presents a mysterious, forbidden secret manual, claiming that only Asura has the strength to master it. Asura reaches out to the glowing, ominous relic, and as he touches it, blood begins to drip into the void, while spectral chains erupt to bind him, locking tight around his wrists with a sickening crunch, and his eyes widen in sudden, sharp realization as the dark energy surges through his body. While the subordinate reveals this is a trap to seize his power and coldly tells him to accept his fate, but Asura just laughs, his aura flaring with terrifying intensity, declaring he is the very mandate of heaven and the embodiment of destruction itself. The subordinate panics, screaming for the others to activate the barrier, but Asura lunges forward, his fist glowing with lethal intent, and with a single crushing blow he shatters the subordinate's resolve, sending him flying through the air, and the subordinate cries out in disbelief as a massive shockwave of blood-red energy tears through the chamber, reflecting the destruction in the pool of blood below. While the surrounding soldiers watch in sheer terror, and they collapse in fear, offering their final desperate greetings as they realize they are bowing to the true unstoppable king of Shura. And so the life of the legendary Fist King comes to a sudden, futile end, until a mysterious system prompt flickers into existence, asking if he wants to participate, and he smashes the interface with a single angry punch, wondering what the hell is happening, while a tiny floating guide appears, warning him of an ominous presence. And a massive red dragon lunges from the shadows, forcing him to draw his blade to parry the strike, and he curses under his breath, barely holding his ground as the beast prepares its devastating inferno breath. And he realizes he's in serious trouble as the beam of fire incinerates the floor, but his strategy guide kicks in, analyzing the attack with lightning speed, and it completes the analysis, granting him a massive fire resistance buff. So he pivots, dodging the flames with perfect precision, and he raises his blade, calling upon the holy sword of Asterion, unleashing a blinding judgment of heaven, which strikes the dragon with divine force. And the beast collapses, the quest finally complete, as he sighs, relieved that the close call is over, and he asks his companion if she's alright, but she just reminds him they only have the top of the tower left, urging him to hurry so they can finally return to their families, and he smiles, agreeing that they have to finish this. But even after 3 years of climbing, he can't shake this deep sense of unease, wondering what could possibly be waiting for them at the very end. And he goes silent, lost in his own dark thoughts, until he places his hand on the final door and pushes it open, ready to face his destiny, confident that no monster can surpass his stats. But at that exact moment, a shadow looms over him, and a terrifying flaming entity appears before his eyes, and he stares in confusion, asking who they are, as he realizes he's standing face to face with a man who looks exactly like him. And he stammers, asking what the hell is going on, wondering if this old guy is actually the final boss, as the man stands there radiating an aura of pure, unadulterated power, and he asks what this place is, realizing he's been trapped here. And he's shocked to see the man can talk, realizing he's dealing with a monster of terrifying intelligence, so he draws his sword, refusing to let his guard down, and he lunges, trying to end the fight before it even begins. But the man does not even flinch, and he effortlessly parries the strike, declaring that this is the end, as he unleashes another judgment of heaven. But he's stunned to see the man is weaker than he expected, and the man mocks him, asking what he thinks he is doing, and he gasps, realizing his ultimate skill was blocked by a single hand, and he understands that the final boss is still the final boss. So he lets the system exploit the target's weakness, calculating a high success probability, but suddenly the system screams error and shuts down, and the success rate plummets to a pathetic 0.43%, leaving him breathless and terrified as he realizes the man is a true monster, and the man tells him not to be so frightened, claiming he does not waste time fighting those who are not worth it. And he asks confused if he's really not worth fighting as the man tells him his skill level is a joke and asks him with a dark glare what this place is really for, and he finally realizes why his system failed. Understanding that this stage was a test of his true strength, and he laughs realizing the gimmick was hidden in plain sight, knowing that only by proving his worth can he deal any real damage, so he focuses determined to prove himself. And he activates his ultimate trait Chosen Hero, pushing his stats to the absolute maximum peak, and he strikes with everything he has, his stats hitting the limit. And the man looks on surprised by the sudden surge in power, but he sneers asking if he really dares to challenge him with such trivial numbers, and he crushes the air with his fist calling the system disgusting, saying he does not care about the rules anymore. And he vows to tear the whole system apart as he screams, pouring his soul into one final desperate attack, and he strikes, shattering the very interface of his reality as the blue window explodes into fragments. And the tower itself begins to collapse, and he screams in agony as the feedback hits him, his status card shattering completely, and the system crashes, sustaining critical irreparable damage. As the tower crumbles into the sky and the system shuts down, deleting all his saved data, leaving the man standing there, proving that true strength cannot be measured by numbers, and he tells him the game is finally over. And he falls to the ground broken and defeated, whispering a final hollow apology as he returns to level 1. 3 years ago I was summoned to this mysterious tower, and I climbed it alongside many comrades, but in the end I was the only one who survived, the lone survivor. My guide Nova asked if conquering this place would actually let us go home, and I could not help but wonder if climbing blindly was even worth the risk. But Nova just reminded me that returning might not even be possible, yet she insisted that our path still held some deeper meaning. And that my journey was not for nothing. A glimmer of hope. Suddenly, a mysterious man appeared, and I desperately checked my status window, then my inventory, and even my quest log, but my system just rebooted, leaving me in total shock. Everything was gone. The man mocked me, calling my obsession with numbers pathetic, and he declared that those blue windows would never appear again. The system is dead. I begged him to spare me, terrified by his overwhelming presence, but he just scoffed, claiming he does not waste time on those who are not worth fighting. And he demanded to know what this place really was, asking me what I thought I had to do to return to my original world, and I admitted I had no idea how to go back. Completely lost. I told him the only way was to clear the final stage. But he looked at me confused by the concept of a clear, and I wondered if this guy was some kind of ancient relic, so I tried to explain the rules in a way he could understand, telling him he had to clear the entire tower. And he laughed, demanding I clear every single floor without exception, so I suggested he start with the quests. How simple. But he just grinned, vowing to smash the entire tower to pieces instead, and I panicked, shouting that that was not what clearing meant at all. He ignored me and unleashed a blast of pure power, and the entire tower began to crumble under his sheer force, and I stared in disbelief, wondering what the hell was happening, screaming at him for wrecking the tower for no reason. Total chaos. The structure collapsed into ruins, and I was sent flying, wondering what kind of monster he was, struggling to comprehend how he could destroy the tower with his bare hands. Absolute madness. I screamed for Nova as I fell. And she suddenly appeared, catching me just in time, grabbing me with a firm grip, and I asked where she'd been, but she apologized for being late. She was busy grabbing my sword. She warned me we had to get out of there immediately. And I asked her what could possibly be worse than the tower falling, but the system glitched, flashing an error about abnormal access, and a dark void opened up, threatening to delete all the tower's data, and we stared at the abyss, wondering what that was. As the debris began to get sucked into the hole, a terrifying sight. We barely dodged the pull, knowing that getting dragged in meant we were finished, and the system warned that the trash bin was full, forcing data into the real world, and the man stood amidst the destruction, looking around, wondering if he just stepped on something, and I watched him confused as he asked if it was just his imagination, while he stood there wondering why nothing else was happening, and I yelled at him, telling him that destroying the tower was not the way to clear it. Warning him that even for someone as strong as him, this was too much, but he just unleashed another wave of energy, and a massive surge of power erupted, and he smirked, realizing he finally had a successor. And I felt the crackle of his power, but then an uninvited guest appeared, and the man glared at her, recognizing her instantly, and I gasped, realizing it was Manhwa. And she looked at the man, calling him the rude brat who destroyed her tower, and the man gritted his teeth in pure rage, lunging at her, demanding to know how she dared to interfere, but she just flicked her finger. And a shockwave sent him crashing into the ground, and I screamed, terrified for him, but she ignored me, asking if he had not heard what she said, and she demanded to know if he was the one who destroyed her creation. And I was stunned, watching her take him down in a single blow, wondering if this was the issue that Nova had mentioned, and the man clawed at the earth, realizing the truth, and he told her she was clearly different from the Manhwa he knew. But he knew one thing for sure. She was the one who built that damn tower, and he laughed, calling the whole number-based game her doing, and I shouted that I had done everything they asked, but she just glared at the tower and the game, disgusted by it all. And the man jumped up demanding she send him back to his kingdom, and she looked at him with a cold, knowing gaze, and she laughed, telling him he was truly amusing, and I asked her who told us that ridiculous lie about clearing the tower. But she just told me to go ahead and break whatever I wanted, promising that if I destroyed her creation she would send me back, and she began restoring the deleted data, and I watched in horror as dummy players were generated. And I asked how they were all still there, and she smiled, revealing that there were still more towers left to destroy, and I looked out at the horizon, seeing them everywhere, and I powered up ready for the next fight. And I lunged at her with everything I had, but she blocked my strike with ease, and she asked me with a smirk what exactly this piece of trash was supposed to do. The system is dead, but the real challenge is just beginning. Because from now on the towers you have to destroy are everywhere, and there are still far more of them left in this world. Yuta stands in shock, while the memories of his fallen comrades scream to keep climbing, but she just laughs, claiming the world's balance is far too stable to break. So he lunges at her with everything he has, but she blocks his strike like it's nothing, mocking him, asking what this piece of trash is supposed to do. He snaps, screaming in rage at the sight of his comrades being used as mere tools, and he demands to know why they were dragged into this nightmare, but she just calls them parts of her perfect world. And she tells him that the world is unstable and needs his power to exist. She reveals the quests were just a lie to keep him climbing, and then she dismisses him, saying she has no more use for someone without power. She prepares to erase him. And Yuta breaks down, blaming himself for ever entering the tower. If only he were stronger, if only he were wiser, he could have stopped her. She flickers, and he unleashes a desperate final attack, but she just smirks, and the man steps in, mocking her for laying hands on his prey. He tells Yuta his courage is admirable, but it's still too early for him to win. He lunges at her with a massive blast, and he claims the right to take her head for himself. She is impressed by his raw power, but she refuses to let him run wild, and she traps him in a cage of dark energy. She orders him to conquer every tower in the world, and she promises to wait for him at the very top. He falls to his knees, and she commands him to conquer every nation, but he just glares, noting how much she resembles the Manhwa he once knew. He wonders why she sent him here, and he charges at the dummy players, cutting them down, screaming his name, trying to wake them up. But she warns him it's useless. They are just echoes of the past, and he refuses to accept it, but she just mocks his attachment to ghosts. She tells him to waste his life with them, and she walks away, leaving him to face the horde alone. He cuts through them, but they just keep coming, and he realizes he's fighting a losing battle. He needs to help the man, but Nova warns him that using his sword without stats will kill him. He ignores her, and the spirits beg him to keep climbing. And he strikes the ground with everything he has left, knowing he can't avenge them if he dies here. He swears he will find her, and he unleashes a massive blinding strike, a final desperate act of defiance. The man laughs, impressed by his usefulness, and he tells Yuta that he is not the one who will kill her. He carries the broken boy, mocking his weakness and promising to give him the chance to finish her later. He looks forward to it. And in the distance, a mysterious figure watches, waiting in the shadows, and the flow of events pushes forward. And the flow of events pushes forward, 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 and the flow of events pushes forward. Deep in the mountains, a lone warrior meditates under a waterfall, but his inner power remains completely sealed away, and he realizes with a grim look that he has no other choice. He slams his fist into the ground, but he still cannot feel a single shred of his former strength. He growls, mocking the audacity of whoever sealed his danshin, and he knows he has to take action now. He kicks the exhausted Yuta, demanding to know how long he plans to play dead. And the impact sends shockwaves through the cavern floor. Yuta scrambles up, calling him a muscle gorilla for finally showing his true colors, but the man just sighs, unimpressed by the boy's lack of focus. He snaps that he has no time for games, he needs to destroy those towers. And Yuta questions why they should bother with towers instead of hunting the woman down. The man screams in frustration, asking if Yuta is truly that dense, and he explains that the towers are the only things keeping this world anchored. He declares that by smashing every single tower, he'll finally be able to track her and end this. But Yuta just stares, thinking the guy has completely lost his mind. Nova whispers to Yuta that this man is far too dangerous to follow, especially since he shattered Yuta's stat window on a whim. The man bellows at them to stop whispering. And he admits he only keeps Yuta around because his swordsmanship might be useful. He challenges Yuta, asking if he is not also desperate to catch that woman, but he cruelly reminds him that he's currently too weak to do anything about it. He promises to strengthen their bodies in one go. And they arrive at a bizarre looming tower that defies logic. They step onto the grounds and the man stares up at the structure, noting how much it has grown in just a few days. He tells Yuta that with his current body, he might finally be of some use. And he turns to his disciple, who bows in total submission. The disciple thanks his master, and the master laughs, noting that with more time Yuta might have actually learned to train properly. He looks around for the boy, wondering where he wandered off to. And Yuta finally stumbles into view, gasping for air. He's dragging a massive heavy log, and he screams, asking if this is some kind of insane marine boot camp. He notices Nova's new muscular physique. And he collapses, unable to move another step. The man mocks his pathetic display, and he stares at the grotesque tower, calling it even worse than the last one. Yuta asks if they're entering, but he does not see a single entrance. And the man just smirks, telling him there's no need for a door. He prepares to smash the tower to pieces, and the disciple cheers him on, expecting a single-hit destruction. Yuta shouts for them to wait and think it through. But it's too late. A critical system error triggers and dark crackling energy begins to surge. They are forcibly dragged into the tower's interior, and Yuta screams, cursing the old man for his recklessness. They land in a desolate, ruined city, and the air is thick with violent, crackling electricity. Yuta groans, wondering what kind of nightmare this is, and he looks at his own hands, panicked and lost. He realizes they're in a city, and he fears they've been sent back to their original world. Then he sees them, the scattered corpses of countless players, and he realizes this is definitely not home. He asks where the hell they are, and a sinister purple mist begins to consume the bodies as the man watches, unfazed by the carnage. The souls of the dead are being harvested into a single point. And a mysterious figure descends, mocking the newly summoned players. He warns them not to bother resisting, and he claims that he alone will reach the top. He gestures with a flick of his hand, and a massive, terrifying skeleton rises from the shadows. Yuta gasps at the sheer scale of the monster, and the creature's eyes burn with a malevolent purple light. It reaches out to crush them, but the man just laughs, unimpressed by the threat. He lunges forward, and the impact of his strike shakes the entire city. He calls the monster worthless trash, and he challenges the figure, asking if he really thinks he can stand at the top. He mocks his arrogance, and the figure stares back, cold and unbothered. He summons even more horrors from the void, and he smiles, finding their struggle amusing. He decides to test them, curious to see how long they can last. Test. You insignificant thing, you dare to test me. The audacity. I'll test my king, he declares with a smirk. The skeleton lord looms, radiating pure malice. Chains of dark energy erupt, binding the warrior in place. A massive beast lunges from the shadows, claws bared, but the warrior does not even flinch. He just laughs as the monster tears into him. How ticklish, he mocks while shrugging off the assault. Summon, he commands, his eyes cold and calculating. An entire abyss horde pours into the city, and he stomps the ground, shattering the reality around them. The skeletons are obliterated in a single brutal shockwave. A massive red brute charges, swinging a fist the size of a building, but he catches it with one hand and summons a shackled wraith to finish the job. What? I do not understand, the figure stammers in disbelief. He has no stats, I cannot even sense any skills, so how does he possess such powerful strength? The mysterious player draws his blades, glowing with purple fire. No need to answer, I'll absorb your soul and find out myself. Authority. The air ignites with purple light. Deathmark, he whispers, closing the distance in a blur. Grayug, what the hell is that insane destructive power? Just what is that guy? Our runaway Yuta. That is no longer anything like a player, I can definitely sense it. From that person, the same power as Goddess Eshua. The city trembles as the two titans prepare to clash. Dust and debris swirl in the wake of their pressure. So this is finally the last soul? What a troublesome one, but with this my contract is complete. Unknown player authority soul absorption. Your soul I will put to good use. Goddess, you say? Do not tell me you are talking about that damned woman who sealed my dantian. I was just looking for that woman, how convenient. If you do not want to die, tell me. Right, the last one could not be that easy, but do not be mistaken, the one who will die in this tower is not me, it is you. Purple blades dance through the air. HMPH. The warrior parries, sparks flying like fireworks. The player's eyes widen as his strike is effortlessly deflected. A massive explosion rocks the city. You really are an absurd one. I will not deny it anymore, you are definitely strong, I will face you accordingly. Authority. The armor of Death King Hades' armor. They collide again, a blur of purple and black. Steel rings against steel, let us see you handle this. He unleashes a flurry of strikes. Is that all you have got, brat? I am far from done. He dives into the fray. You are right, your words are correct, we are far from done. The gap between your power and mine, a blinding flash consumes the screen, ha 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 ha. Yeah, you really are strong for now at least. I will tell you all something. You said you are looking for Goddess Eshua. Goddess Eshua is the one who gave me this tower. However, I have not yet obtained all the tower's authority. So I made a contract with Goddess Eshua. I would offer 10 player souls to be reborn as the true heir. And with this at last I have acquired all the souls. And Nova, damn it, when did he, you bastard? What did you do to Nova? Stay out of this small fry. Gugook, there is no point in resisting. There is nothing you can do anymore. Quest Heir's ritual, you have obtained the last 10th soul. All tower authority will be unlocked soon. I see, so you are a necromancer who manipulates vengeful spirits. There were some who used such lowly techniques in my kingdom as well, those wicked demonic cult bastards. Normally, I would never use such filthy techniques, but you have crossed the line. Watch closely the power of true necromancy. The souls I have collected are being stolen by him? In no way, something like this should not be possible within the system. You now run wild as much as you want, brats. From now on you all will be the ones to crush that damned bastard. The warrior reveals he's hijacking the souls the villain collected. Pure chaos, and the villain is losing his mind, screaming that this should not be possible, but the warrior just laughs, commanding the stolen spirits to run wild. And the spirits turn their gaze toward their former master. Total betrayal, ready to crush that arrogant bastard for good, while the side characters are left completely stunned. What is happening, wondering if they're actually dead or just caught in the crossfire. And they demand the warrior give them back their bodies right now, but he just scoffs at their stupidity, telling them they'd be dead if he had not intervened, because that villain was trying to turn them into mindless puppets, so he ripped their souls out to keep them safe while their bodies healed. And now that he's stolen the villain's power, that brat is essentially powerless, though the heroes still feel like nothing has changed, so the warrior commands the spirits to show the villain what true necromancy looks like, and the villain, still reeling, asks if he really thinks he's nothing. But the warrior shuts him down with a cold, dismissive order, and the pressure in the air becomes suffocating as the villain mocks the small number of spirits the warrior has summoned, claiming that what he took is just a drop in the bucket. And he laughs at the absurdity of fighting him with only 2 people, completely blinded by his own arrogance. But the warrior does not care about numbers, he just strikes, and the blade slices through the air with terrifying precision, tearing through the villain's defenses like paper, leaving the villain in absolute shock at the sheer power, wondering where this insane strength is coming from, especially since these guys were barely alive a moment ago. And the atmosphere turns heavy with impending doom as the spirits loom over the battlefield, and the side character watches in horror as the situation spirals, screaming for Nova, desperate to know if he's finally awake. But the spirits are already closing in, and the tension reaches a breaking point as a massive blow connects, sending blood flying, and the impact shakes the very foundation of the city, leaving everyone stunned. What just happened? And the warrior stands tall, completely unfazed, while the side character panics, checking on Nova, who admits he feels stronger, but knows this fight cannot go on forever. And the horde of spirits continues to swarm, while the warrior watches with a calculating, dangerous gaze, tapping into his interface to find a way out, and he tells them the only way to stop this is to destroy that disgusting window. But he admits his own power is sealed, making it a difficult task, so he asks if there's still a way to break it, and he clenches his fist, proving that even without internal energy he's a monster, claiming he can produce power just as strong. And he turns to the little spirit, demanding she offer her soul to him, causing the world to tremble as the request hangs in the air, but the system flashes a warning: insufficient souls, and the warrior curses the vermin for wasting his resources. Though he knows he can just collect more, so he reaches out, reclaiming his stolen property, and the spirits answer his call, ready to wipe out the enemies, while he warns the brat that he only has one chance, telling him to clear a path so he can finish this, and the side character agrees, not out of trust, but for survival, letting out a battle cry as he prepares his final strike, and the holy sword ignites, cutting through the darkness. While the warrior watches, annoyed at how much strength they're wasting, laughing at their pathetic attempt to handle his collection, and he steps out from the shadows, mocking their cowardice, telling them he's been watching every single one of their failures. And he gathers his energy for one final devastating blow, declaring that everything ends right here, and the villain's eyes go wide as he realizes the end is near as the attack obliterates everything in its path. And the system window shatters into a million pieces, revealing the true terrifying stats of the air, and the villain screams in disbelief, unable to accept that his hard-earned power was destroyed so easily. As he watches his stat window crumble into nothingness, and the system crashes, corrupting all his data, leaving the side character collapsed on the ground, wondering if he's finally back in his own body. And he touches his chest, feeling the healing take hold, amazed but terrified of the old man's true nature, and he stares at the warrior, wondering if he even has limits, while the villain loses his mind completely, begging for it not to end like this, and he blames them for his total downfall, screaming that he's lost everything he worked for. Absolute despair. The villain is losing his mind, screaming that this should not be possible. But the warrior just stands there cold and unbothered, while the villain spirals into absolute despair, and the side characters watch in total shock as the warrior reveals he's been hijacking the souls all along, commanding the stolen spirits to run wild, and the villain realizes his entire plan is crumbling, while the city shakes from the sheer intensity of the power, and the side characters are left wondering if they're even alive, as they demand to know what's happening to their bodies, but the warrior just scoffs at their stupidity, revealing he ripped their souls out to keep them safe, while the goddess watches the chaos unfold. And the warrior questions the villain's pathetic motivations, asking if he's really just another lost player, as the hero confesses his world was destroyed by a monster wave, and he admits he only climbed the tower to save everyone. But he learned a dark truth at the top, that conquering the tower grants the power to create a new world, and the villain is stunned by this revelation, while the hero explains he tried to use that power to recreate his home, desperate to protect the people he lost, but he realizes his efforts were all in vain, and he screams that the interference ruined everything, while the warrior mocks his cowardly excuses, asking why he really ran away when his world fell, and he calls out the villain's pathetic obsession with power, questioning the point of his foolish games as he steps closer, looming over the broken man, telling him he just wanted to play the hero, and the villain snaps, screaming for him to shut up as he lunges forward in a blind rage, but the warrior strikes him down with terrifying force, and the impact obliterates the surrounding area, while the villain coughs up blood, still clinging to his delusions, and the goddess appears, announcing the final stage is cleared, offering the hero a choice to return to his dying world, or to inherit the tower's power and recreate his lost home within the system, leaving the hero to make his final decision as she lays out the grim reality of his options. And the hero finally makes his choice, vowing to inherit the power and save his world, while the system begins to collapse in a massive warning, and the side characters panic as the tower starts to fall, asking the warrior what they should do now, as he recalls the goddess's cryptic words and realizes all paths lead to the same end, while the side character wonders what that path truly means. And the hero realizes this is their only way to meet her, as he tells them to search for that path, and they question why he's helping them now, but he finally understands the truth he tried to ignore, admitting he was just a coward playing hero, and he decides he won't return to his original world because there's no reason to live in an empty life, so he tells them to hurry to the exit. And he accepts his fate, staying behind in the ruins, vowing to crush the goddess when he finally meets her, while the side character begs him to come along, but the warrior shuts him down with cold finality, asking what greater mercy there is than choosing one's own death, and the side character screams that there's no time left as the tower begins to crumble into nothingness, and the hero struggles to hold on to his resolve, while he carries the weight of his decision, and the little spirit watches in horror as he admits he has no power or purpose left, but he finds a shred of hope in the face of death, telling the side character that reasons to live will return, and he urges him not to give up on his life while the exit portal flickers, nearing its end, and he finally reveals his name to the boy, as the hero acknowledges the unusual name, and the warrior introduces himself as Lee Chanwoo, while he makes one final desperate request, and he passes his power to the boy, who is confused and terrified by the sudden gift as the warrior accepts that he will soon disappear, and his body begins to fade into the system's void, while he urges the boy to return to his world. And the boy cries out his name one last time as the final seconds of the tower tick away, and the entire structure is swallowed by darkness until the system confirms the tower has vanished, leaving the goddess alone on her throne as she watches the void with a chilling gaze, and she mocks the efforts of the unstat player. The tower's data is wiped clean, and the structure begins to crumble, total system collapse. They watch in silence as the reality of their situation sinks and everything is gone. Yuta stares at the fading energy in his hands, wondering if it's already too late, because if the stat window breaks, the player's body usually vanishes with it. A terrifying thought. He questions why he's still standing while Lee Chanwoo faded, and he wonders if he's somehow managed to retain a shred of system power, but the warrior cuts through his thoughts, mocking his serious expression, asking if he's actually sulking over the death of that pathetic necromancer. He laughs at the boy's soft heart, though Yuta is just trying to process the loss, because Lee Chanwoo left him with a strange, heavy feeling and a final mysterious gift. Yuta does not understand the nature of the power, but he decides to pass it on to the warrior, feeling deep down that this is the only right choice left to make. The warrior senses the goddess's energy within the gift, hoping it's enough to break his seal, but he warns the boy not to get his hopes up, as it's only a small fragment of strength. The energy is familiar, yet it lacks the overwhelming force that once bound him, and Yuta finally asks the question burning in his mind: what exactly is a danshin? The warrior dismisses the need for it, claiming he's strong enough regardless. because his current power is purely physical, built from the ground up through sheer grit. Yuta is stunned, realizing this monster has been fighting without any stats at all, a total beast. The warrior explains that once the Danshin is restored, he can harness true internal power, of force that flows through the body to unleash strength far beyond any system-given stat. Yuta's eyes widen in disbelief, wondering if this is just another form of magic, but he remembers the old man who was terrifyingly strong without a single window in sight. He wonders just how high those hidden stats would have been, and when he voices his thoughts, the warrior immediately senses his doubt, slamming his fist down to prove a point. His hearing is as sharp as his strike. Yuta flinches, confirming once again that he's dealing with an absolute monster, and he finally asks what the warrior truly means by strength. The warrior scoffs at the foolish question, his eyes burning with intensity. Because strength is not a number on a screen, it's the result of blood and sweat. He clenches his fist, the air vibrating with the weight of his conviction, explaining that if he trains 1,000 times, he's earned his place, but if someone else pushes for 1,001, they've simply pushed further. He stomps the ground, the earth cracking beneath his feet, telling Yuta that the real measure is how desperately you crave that growth with every single blow. It's about giving your absolute all to seize what you desire, and that relentless process is the only path to true unyielding strength. He lunges forward with a terrifying burst of speed, and the sheer force of his movement tears through the landscape, leaving Yuta and the spirit in total breathless shock. The warrior pauses, looking back with a smirk, asking if the lesson finally clicked. But he quickly pivots, noting that the real problem is figuring out how to wield this new power. He holds the glowing energy, feeling its potential hum against his skin, while Yuta screams in frustration, completely lost in the chaos of it all. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts, the air growing heavy and cold. And the warrior realizes they are not alone anymore. Someone is watching. Yuta feels the dread rising, his heart pounding against his ribs, and the warrior turns his gaze toward the horizon, his expression hardening. He wonders if the newcomer is the one responsible for this mess. And Yuta gasps, recognizing the figure emerging from the shadows. The warrior stands tall, his muscles coiled, and ready for a fight, commanding the intruder to step out and show their face. The ground trembles as a masked figure steps into the light. And Yuta stares in horror at the monster that somehow survived the tower's collapse. The warrior does not hesitate, challenging the stranger directly, and the figure raises a massive, ominous axe ready to strike. The warrior laughs, his blood boiling for a challenge. No more talk, just action. The masked monster charges, moving with unnatural fluid grace, and the axe swings down with a lethal purple-hued arc. The warrior dodges, his eyes locked onto his opponent's every move, and he counters with a brutal strike that shakes the very foundation of the earth. The monster grunts, recognizing the warrior's style, an axe-type clash. They collide again, the shockwaves flattening the surrounding trees, and the impact creates a crater, dust and debris exploding into the sky. Blood spatters the ground, a grim reminder of the lethality of this duel. The warrior stands firm, his weapon held ready, his breathing steady, mocking the monster, telling him his stance is decent but ultimately lacking. The masked figure stares back, cold and unreadable, and they clash once more, a deafening sound ringing through the air. The warrior catches the blade with his bare hand, blood dripping from his palm, but he does not flinch, his eyes blazing with a wild, predatory hunger. He weaves through the monster's defense, closing the distance in a heartbeat, and delivers a crushing blow directly to the monster's mask. The force of the impact sends the monster flying, crashing into the ruins, and the warrior stands over the wreckage, taunting his fallen foe. The ground begins to buckle as the monster rises, fueled by pure, unadulterated rage. It lets out a guttural, terrifying sound, promising that it will never forgive this insult. Yuta watches, his mind reeling as he recognizes the face beneath the mask, and he cries out, asking why the monster is so obsessed with destroying his tower. The warrior demands to know why his tower was destroyed, and Yuta is left completely stunned by the sudden accusation. While Kalina tries to clarify that they are not even sure if it was his, but the warrior is clearly not in the mood for excuses, screaming that he saw them do it with his own two eyes, and he rages about why they would commit such a senseless act. While he explains that without that tower, he's been trapped in this wasteland for 2 years, suffering through a ruined world when he could have easily returned home long ago. It's infuriating, but he quickly shuts down the conversation, mocking the boy for losing the fight. And Yuta is left speechless as the sun sets on their tense standoff, and the warrior finally apologizes for the misunderstanding, admitting he almost hurt them by mistake. It's all good. Yuta laughs it off, telling him to stand up, and he can't help but marvel at how the warrior reached the top of the tower with such low stats, so he asks to take one more look at Kalina's stat window, and she pulls it up for him to see, leaving Yuta in total disbelief that she actually made it because her stats are so low she's basically never touched them. A total mystery. He wonders if she's as strong as the old man, asking if there was really nothing at the top, and the warrior confirms there was absolutely nothing there. Just an error message about insufficient stats as the tower vanished, which Yuta realizes must have been Eshua's doing, and the warrior is confused by the name, so Yuta explains that Eshua is the one who gave them their powers and brought them to the tower. And the warrior realizes she must be the one they're hunting to get back home, but he's more focused on his own training sitting in meditation, and Yuta watches wondering what he's actually doing as the warrior channels his energy, creating a brilliant golden ring of power that erupts into a massive pillar of light, and Yuta cries out in shock at the sheer intensity, seeing the warrior's internal power finally begin to flow. Though he's still frustrated that it's not enough because he needs to break the seal on his Danshin, and he realizes he must use her power to do it as a dark ominous energy fills the air. And he smirks, finding the situation incredibly interesting because he's finally figured out how to reclaim his true strength, and he tells Yuta to hurry up because they're heading to the next tower. But Yuta hesitates, asking if every tower even has an heir's power, wondering if there are towers still waiting for someone, and the warrior insists he knows the way, calling out to Nova. And Yuta gasps, staring at her in total confusion, wondering why she looks so different as she begins to glow with a strange ethereal light, and she admits she does not know what happened either. But she can finally feel the flow of power, sensing all the big and small energies that make up this world, and she tells Yuta she can track them now, offering to guide him straight to the heir's power and their next destination, while far away a dark castle looms under the moonlight, and the interior is cold and silent. Until a pair of polished shoes steps into the hall, revealing a mysterious elf-like figure who reports on the status of the Bloodwind field and the steady progress of the Dark Mine. As the Demon King sits upon his throne, laughing at the thought of his growing fortune, and he tells Graydon to finally take a break, but the subordinate has one last strange report. And the king asks what could possibly be so unusual, so Graydon explains that a patrol spotted an unidentified group, and based on his analysis, it seems a new hero party has arrived in the demon realm. And the king scoffs, mocking them for never learning their lesson, but he tells them to bring whoever they are because no matter who they might be, they are not stepping foot inside his castle. And the flow of events pushes forward. He's completely unbothered and practically begging for a fight because he knows exactly how this ends: total annihilation. The squad hits a total dead end because this guy is dead set on guarding his castle. Talk about a major buzzkill. Kalina's stats are officially confirmed. And the group is instantly teleported to the next tower, but Yuta is already annoyed by the system's constant pestering. He's focused on one thing: restoring his Danshin, so he demands to know where the heir is hiding, and points toward the massive castle, claiming the heir's power is locked away inside. Meanwhile, the king is absolutely losing his mind, screaming at hero Evan for failing to kill the Demon King yet again. But Evan just laughs it off, blaming his broken gear, and has the audacity to ask for better equipment and more saintesses, which makes the king snap, tired of his constant excuses, and Evan keeps rambling about his weak holy power. Until the king finally hits his breaking point, declaring that Evan is no longer the hero and banishing him from the kingdom forever. But Evan just smirks, still acting like he has a secret plan. So the king calls him out for squandering the treasury on a luxury lifestyle, threatening to execute him right there if he does not leave, and Evan just waves it off, acting like he's the victim, when suddenly the entire room is rocked by a massive explosion. And the guards panic, wondering what kind of attack this is, but Yuta stands there calm and ready for a fight, and the guards realize they've been infiltrated, so Yuta warns them to hand over their power if they want to live. And the guards try to restrain him, but Yuta just clenches his fist and sends the royal guards flying with a single brutal punch, leaving everyone in the room stunned. And the king watches in horror as his guards are wiped out, while Yuta just grins, enjoying the chaos, and Evan proudly introduces his new secret weapons to the king, claiming they're all stronger than any S-rank mercenary, and declaring that with them he'll finally take down the Demon King. But Yuta is confused by the sudden turn of events, and they find themselves in the middle of the city, where Yuta slams into the ground, demanding to know what kind of cheap trick this is, and Evan just laughs, asking if they're new players or heirs, so Yuta hesitates, unsure how to respond, but Evan puts an arm around him, saying it does not matter, and offers to team up to take down the Demon King, but Yuta shuts him down, threatening to rip the power right out of him, and Evan just smiles, unfazed by the threat, telling him to go ahead and try, if he's sure he can extract the power without destroying it, which leaves Yuta completely speechless, and Evan explains that forcing it will only destroy the power, but if they work together he'll hand it over fair and square. And Yuta scoffs, calling it a pathetic offer, but the others realize he might actually be telling the truth, so they introduce themselves, and Yuta reluctantly shakes his hand, though he's still suspicious of Evan's claims. And Evan asks if they have a deal, so they decide they do not have much of a choice, but Yuta warns him that one trick will cost him his life, and Evan just claps, ready to get them geared up. As they look out over the hellish landscape of the demon realm and finally realize where they've arrived, noting how much more spacious it is than they expected, and Evan shouts that it's time to slay the Demon King. But Yuta immediately starts trashing the gear Evan provided, calling it junk that just gets in the way, and Evan looks genuinely hurt, mentioning how expensive that stuff was, so Yuta asks if he does not need his own gear either. And the group prepares for the final push, demanding to know where the Demon King is hiding as they stare up at the looming dark castle, and suddenly missiles start launching from the fortress, raining down destruction on the battlefield, and the group is caught in the middle of the barrage screaming that using missiles is totally cheating, and they look at each other in total disbelief. While deep inside the castle, a mysterious figure emerges standing cold and composed with his sword, and he decides it's time to deal with these intruders himself. The group is caught in a sudden hellish barrage, and they can't believe the Demon King is actually using missiles. Total cheating, but Yuta is not backing down, and he unleashes a massive counterattack to intercept the incoming fire, checking to make sure his team survive the blast. While they stare in shock at his raw power, and even Evan is forced to admit that this is what a true heir looks like, though he's still annoyed that the Demon King is playing dirty from the start, so he gathers the group, warning them that the entire demon realm is a custom-built dungeon where every single rock and lava flow is a potential weapon, and they need to stay sharp because the next trap could be anywhere as the ground erupts beneath their feet. And the Demon King taunts them from his fortress, laughing at the idea of them ever stepping foot inside his castle, which only fuels Evan's rage as he screams at the king to stop hiding and face them like a man, swearing that no matter how many traps he lays he will not be stopped. And the Demon King just chuckles, deciding to resist their efforts with everything he has, while Yuta notices a strange status window flickering in the air, and realizes the Demon King is actually a player just like them, so the king invites them to feast their eyes on his latest creation, as he downloads a brand new deadly dungeon map, and the group finds themselves lost in a dark, suffocating corridor, where Yuta accidentally triggers a trap and he loses his temper, screaming at the absurdity of it all, while Kaylina tries to stay focused and she swings her massive axe to shatter the walls. Checking in on Yuta as the dust settles, and Yuta is just relieved that she's safe, though he's still wondering where the rest of the team went, and he confirms that this is definitely a dungeon designed by the king. So Kaylina asks if he's even familiar with how these things work, and Yuta grins, noting that they're basically just like video games where everything is a complex randomized maze, and they realize they've been walking in circles. So Kaylina asks how they're ever supposed to escape, and Yuta decides they need to find Evan first, because if anyone can break this gimmick it's him, as Yuta slams his fist into the wall, and he starts smashing through the architecture while Evan screams at him to stop destroying their only way out, but Yuta snaps back, calling him a useless brat, and he marches off to find his own path. So Kaylina warns him that he'll just end up back where he started, and Evan looks at his compass, realizing that even with his pathfinder he's completely lost, so he collapses in defeat, wondering if they're destined to fail. And he laments that he'll never be able to return home, while Kaylina asks why he kept a secret from them, revealing she knows about the other heir in the tower, and Evan acts confused. But she calls him out, knowing the Demon King is a player too, and she can sense the same heir's power radiating from him, so Evan just smirks, calling her a funny kid, and he admits that when he got his power there was another player there. So Kaylina asks if he means Belzar, and Evan confirms it, explaining how the goddess split the power, leaving them on opposite sides of the world, one in the human realm and one in the demon lands. And Kaylina wonders if he was lying about sharing the power, but Evan insists he was not, and he clarifies that he has zero interest in being the heir, because his only goal is the total destruction of the Demon King. And Kaylina is left speechless, while Evan laughs it off, trying to lighten the mood, and suddenly the walls begin to shift as they find themselves back in the same spot. So Evan tells Yuta to stop the chatter and just follow him, but Yuta claims he's already found the exit, and Evan stares in disbelief as a secret staircase reveals itself, and a mysterious elf-like figure stands waiting with a sword, deciding it's time to deal with the hero himself. They're trapped in a loop and keep ending up back at the same statue. So Yuta realizes they've tried every single path, but even the wall markings vanish, and the statue itself seems to be shrinking, which confirms it's a twisted, shifting maze. Then Yuta has a sudden epiphany, and he tells Kaylina he's figured out the trick, so he demands she trust him just this once, and she's totally confused by his plan, wondering what the point of backtracking is, but Yuta insists they need to try something different, so she finally agrees to follow his lead, and they head back into the depths. Then Yuta stops and they realize they've looped right back to the start, but Yuta just grins because he knows they've actually made progress. And he points out a hidden detail to Kaylina, who stares in total shock as a torch suddenly ignites on the wall, and Yuta explains the rules of this dungeon, where they have to hunt for anomalies, so Kaylina asks what he means, and he explains that anything out of place is a clue, like a new trap or a shifted wall. And that's how they'll find the way out, so they follow the pattern of lighting the torches and repeating the process until the path clears, which leaves Kaylina completely baffled. But Yuta just laughs, saying he's a pro at these games, so he tells her to trust him and keep moving, and the final torch flares to life as a massive door finally swings open. And they celebrate the path being clear, while Kaelina wonders how he solved it so fast, and Yuta admits he's obsessed with clearing every game so he knew the gimmick the moment the statue changed. And Kaelina thanks him for saving them as they rush down into the dark and enter a grand ominous arena where they find themselves completely lost again. And wonder where Evan could possibly be, but suddenly, a blade flashes from the shadows and Kaelina barely manages to block the strike as sparks fly from the impact. And a mysterious elf-like figure appears mocking them for surviving the Demon King's maze, so Yuta prepares to fight for his life, but the figure moves with terrifying speed and declares they'll never reach the king as Yuta gasps at the impossible pace and realizes he can't even track the attacks. Then the figure lunges at them. And Kaelina barely dodges the lethal blow as the figure unleashes a flurry of blades, and they struggle to keep up with the onslaught, so Kaelina grips her axe tight and prepares to strike back, but the figure is already behind her, and she panics wondering how he moved so fast as he taunts them with his blade. And the arena becomes a blur of steel, so Kaelina realizes she's being overwhelmed and decides it's time to get serious, but the figure just walks toward them and mocks her for being too slow as he effortlessly deflects their efforts, and Kaelina realizes her speed is the problem, so she pulls out a massive minigun. Eat lead, pal. Kaelina instantly swaps her gear using the inventory window, but even with a heavy-duty minigun, this boss is no joke. It's going to be a tough fight. She opens fire with a hail of lead, yet the elf-like figure dances through the bullets with impossible speed. He's closing the distance, so Kaelina tosses a smoke bomb to disrupt his rhythm, but he slashes right through the cloud, cutting the device in half before it can even fully deploy. A smoke bomb? He realizes she's just trying to blind him, and he readies his blade for a lethal strike. He lunges, but Kaelina quickly switches to a battle staff, loading it from her inventory to parry the incoming blow. Sparks fly as steel meets magic, and she channels a surge of electricity through the staff, unleashing a massive shockwave that forces him back. He's stunned by her versatility, wondering how someone with level 1 stats can fight like a veteran. He laughs off the surprise, impressed that she can swap weapons mid-battle. But he's far from finished, dismissing her efforts as nothing more than cheap tricks. He boasts that he has not even used 10% of his sword's power, and the sheer pressure of his intent leaves them reeling. He threatens to unleash the blade's true form, but suddenly a massive force slams him into the ground, leaving him pinned under the weight of an unseen power. The floor shatters under the impact, and the group stares in shock at the crater, seeing the boss lying defeated in the rubble. They can't believe their eyes, especially when they see the hole leading to the next level. They realize someone just smashed through the floor to clear the way, and they can't help but laugh at the brute force solution. It's insane, but it worked, and they realize their companion is much more capable than he looks. He cuts the chatter short, focused entirely on the fallen enemy and his connection to the Demon King. He identifies the boss as Graydon, the king's personal butler, a recurring nightmare that always blocked their path to the castle. He explains how the difficulty usually spikes when Graydon hits Phase 2, so it's a stroke of luck that he was taken out before he could transform. He praises their skill for handling the fight, but the hero humbly gives all the credit to Kaelina. With the boss down, they turn their attention to the exit, hoping this finally leads them to the end. Suddenly, a glowing door appears standing wide open, as if inviting them through. They decide to seize the momentum, rushing forward to finally confront the Demon King. The hero turns to his companion, demanding to know when he'll finally get his shot at the king. He's told to hang in there just a little longer, because they're only one stage away from the final showdown. They agree to push harder, though the hero is still suspicious about how he knows the layout so well. He brushes it off as basic gamer knowledge, laughing it off as if it's just a game. He offers to scout for any remaining traps, telling the others to head on ahead without him. They hesitate, but eventually agree, warning him not to take too long. He watches them leave, his expression shifting into a cold, calculated grin. Now that he's alone, he can finally finish his real job, and he begins to channel a dark, familiar energy. He uses his storage to collect the fallen boss, absorbing the power into himself. Glowing with a sinister purple light, he counts the souls he's collected, revealing a massive collection of trophies in the void, and he whispers a taunt to the Demon King. It's almost time. The team finally breaches the Demon King's castle, but they're immediately hit with a reality check. This place is a massive custom-built dungeon. They're moving faster than expected, and Yuta is feeling confident, bragging that their powerhouse companion will smash the Demon King with a single punch. But the others are not so sure, warning Yuta that this is not just any castle, it's a trap-filled labyrinth designed by Belzar himself. They realize the entire floor is one giant dungeon, yet strangely, there is not a single monster in sight. Then a glitchy spectral figure flickers into existence, and the team freezes as the entity manifests, wondering if this is some new terrifying summon. It's not a monster though. It's dummy Data, and it mocks them for defeating his loyal servant Graydon. The entity reveals he's already harvested their combat data, and he proudly presents his masterpiece, a perfect glowing clone of their strongest fighter. He's copied their best stats to create an unstoppable copy, and the clone stands there radiating pure overwhelming power. Yuta is completely stunned, watching as the copy faces off against the original while the real fighter stares down his own digital reflection. The team can't believe what they're seeing. Two legendary fighters, and the clone is actually holding his own just by using copied data. The tension spikes as they prepare to clash, and the original scoffs at the puppet trying to mimic his style. He reaches out, testing the clone's resolve, and dares the copy to try and replicate his raw crushing power. He throws a massive punch, and the impact sends a shockwave through the entire hall. The clone stands firm, unfazed, leaving everyone speechless. But the original refuses to believe his own strength is being matched. He lunges again, screaming for the clone to try and copy this, and their fists collide in a blinding flash of energy. The clone counters with a perfect kick, and the original barely blocks the strike, but the clone follows up with a devastating downward blow. The original is forced to scramble back, and the clone immediately shifts into a relentless high-speed assault. They trade blows at an impossible speed, and Yuta watches in pure disbelief, wondering how the clone can possibly trade evenly with a monster like him. It's a battle of perfect mirrors. So the fighter realizes he needs a new strategy and pulls a heavy-duty rifle from his inventory. He fires a shot, but the clone catches the bullet mid-air, and the clone instantly pulls the same weapon from his own storage. He fires back with perfect precision, and the team is left scrambling for cover as the two fighters engage in a high-tech long-range duel. The clone is relentless, and the original finally loses his cool, calling the copy an arrogant brat. He charges in, closing the distance, and swaps his gear for a massive warhammer ready to crush the data-based imposter. He swings with everything he's got, and Yuta screams for him to stay focused, while the clone just laughs, enjoying the performance. The villain gloats that he's copied the best of the best, and warns that even with 4 of them, they're doomed to lose. He demands they stop wasting time and leave his realm, but the team is starting to realize the scale of the threat. The villain is just waiting for them to break, and the original fighter is panting, struggling to keep up. He realizes they have to work together to survive this, but the clone just flashes a wicked predatory grin, mocking the original for thinking he can master his own martial arts. He calls the mimicry an amusing trick and stomps the ground, preparing a final devastating move. He channels the legendary Fist King Asura style, daring the original to copy this. The fighter mocks his digital clone, calling the mimicry an amusing trick. But he's not done yet. He stomps the ground with earth-shattering force and channels the legendary Fist King Asura style, daring the copy to keep up. He unleashes a massive crushing punch, and the impact creates a blinding explosive shockwave that rocks the entire hall. The clone stands firm, but the damage is already done, so the fighter pulls a holy sword from his inventory and prepares to finish the puppet with a divine strike. Yuta watches in pure shock, realizing the clone is actually preparing to copy his signature move, and both unleash the Holy Sword of Asterion in a clash of pure light. The fighter does not stop, shifting into a high-speed flurry and lands a relentless barrage of blows, causing a massive explosion that tears through the dungeon floor. The dust settles in the grand hall, and the fighter catches his breath, noting his internal energy is running low. He knows he can't sustain a full-powered strike for much longer, but he figures this is more than enough to dismantle a mere puppet. Suddenly, the clone flickers with critical error messages, and the dungeon's final defense system kicks in, forcing a massive power surge. The team freezes, realizing the stakes have just skyrocketed, and they watch in horror as the clone enters a terrifying second phase. The fighter scoffs at the persistent machine, asking if it's just throwing a final tantrum before it gets deleted. The clone lunges with renewed speed and equips a massive battle axe from its storage, leaping high to deliver a devastating earth splitter. The fighter channels his energy into a single focused fist and meets the axe head-on in a blaze of fire and fury. The clone's data begins to corrupt rapidly, and the fighter seizes the opening, grabbing the clone by the face and slamming it into the ground with overwhelming force. The defense system collapses, the data is completely wiped, and the fighter tells the trash to finally disappear. High above, the Demon King watches the castle's systems fail, seeing his masterpiece destroyed in a glitchy mess, and he receives a critical error report on his screen. He's stunned that his boss was erased so easily, wondering how the intruder managed to disable his entire defense grid. He laughs off the setback, though he's clearly annoyed, and vows to stop Evan with a new, deadlier plan. He grins, promising to end their little game with his own hands, while the team stands before the final gate, finally arriving at the threshold of the end. They stare at the entrance to the Demon King's inner sanctum, and Yuta brags that he knew they'd make it this far, giving all the credit to their powerhouse companion for clearing the path. They agree that without him, they never would have made it, and they push the heavy doors open. ready to work together and take down the Demon King for good. But suddenly, the hero stops in his tracks, looking around in confusion, realizing the Demon King has completely vanished from his own throne room. A new warning flashes. An external intruder has been detected and the castle's extermination protocol begins as lethal poison gas starts flooding the room. The team coughs, struggling to breathe. While the Demon King gloats over the intercom, introducing his new Venom X, and coldly informs them that they're already as good as dead.